The Fire Emblem series is special to me, with Three Houses being a standout, and not just because it's the first game I reviewed on my channel, but because it was actually good. It was a Harry Potter-like game with a half-baked anime dating simulator built into it, and yet it contained some of the best tactic-style gameplay around. Plus, it awesomely gave the player a reason to replay it, and that is saying something because one playthrough takes around 60 hours. And this was all at a time and for a console where most games weren't even close to being worth $60. I paid full price for 1-2 Switch. That is how bad it was. So when you tell me you have an anime Harry Potter fanfic where player choices actually impact what's happening in the story, I loved it. It's refreshing to see a game take content away from the character based on their choices, as it raised the stakes of the narrative and also makes you wonder, hey, what happened if I chose differently? And all of that I loved about the game. What I didn't love was the fact that I had to have tea with several times in a row just to get them to like me. You gotta take these dames on literal dates. And they feel like real dates because every choice of conversation somehow feels wrong, and you might accidentally be caught glancing at their rack. Sure, over time as the characters' backstories opened up, you developed a small crush on one of them, say Petra. But you can't fall in love with every anime girl you play a video game with. That's what the opiates are for, to make your heart cold. So when I saw every review for Fire Emblem Engage saying that the dating sim stuff was out, I was stoked. However, when I went to play the game, the dating simulator's still there. And I'm not saying the writing is as good as Three Houses. Those characters actually had backstory quests. Engage simply has side quests where legacy characters whoop my ass. But Fire Emblem Three Houses wasn't some War and Peace-esque masterpiece. It was incredibly filled with anime tropes.
Hey, no peeking!
A lot of the writing and the characters feels close to exactly the same.
I am so sorry!
But the reason why Engage is an overall worse game than Three Houses is because it does so little to improve the weak parts, and it removes the teeth of the story. People are mad about the wrong thing. Instead of worrying about whether or not you can go into your GF's dorm room, you should be worried about how consistently shitty the overworld gameplay and mechanics are. It's hard to overstate just how bad the common area of the Somnial or the old classrooms were. There's literally nothing you can interact with in the overworld outside of running up to glowing patches and hopefully getting a useful item, but most likely getting horse manure. Compare that to the overworld of literally just about any other game, even shitty ones like Splatoon, and it just comes up lacking. If you're gonna put so much focus on this relationship building and this overworld activities, maybe the minigames shouldn't be the worst I've ever had the displeasure of playing. But realistically, fans don't care about the shitty fishing minigame, they care that they can no longer ask Chloe if it jiggle. Or maybe you want to play the worst on-the-rails shooter you have played in your entire life. Perfect. Pop in Fire Emblem Engage. The overworld could literally be just a menu, and it would be more efficient to the player if it operated as such. The player has to run to one side of the map to do something, and then run back to the other to do another thing, instead of just conveniently scrolling through a menu. And it used to be a menu in the old versions. Thankfully, the overworld can be a small part of the game. It feels like you're losing out on a ton of content, but since it's so poorly done, you don't really care about it, chiefly because the combat is better than ever. The use of Engage powers feels a lot like the use of Sparks in Mario vs. Rabbids, and some even let you act twice in a turn or attack during an enemy's turn, and the way that changes your play can't be overstated. You can get into fights that last upwards of 3 hours and love every minute of it. It was one of the few games I've recently lost track of time while playing. So it's incredibly jarring that when you step outside of the battles, you are treated to one of the worst JRPG stories and side activities in history. And still includes a massive dating simulator that you will spend time doing because you do have a crush on Goldmary and you are ready to be hurt again. But that is a lot of emotional labor for a fucking video game. The overworld would be better if it was just one of those horrible farming simulators, and it feels like they're going that way with your odd ability to adopt animals from the battlefield that do literally nothing for you because the crafting in this game is fucking useless. I have so much shit that I don't ever need. I got thousands of bond fragments and I don't even know what they do. I have ore coming out of my asshole and I've never needed to forge or sharpen anything, despite the fact that I play with permadeath on hard mode. Honestly, they should do a farming simulator version next. At least that way your player could have some effect on the actual overworld. I mean, Fire Emblem, Harvest Moon would sell buttloads. Instead of improving everything like a proper sequel, this feels like a cheap attempt to add old fan favorite characters to the Three Houses engine. And yet still, despite these flaws, I liked it. And I think it's worth the $60 because it offers 60 hours of combat alone. And for that reason alone, it's worth to get your heart broken by some busty anime bimbo. But it is worrying for the series as a whole and for fans of the genre to be complaining about the lack of in-depth dates from the old games, because that is still a huge chunk of the game. I don't think it's a great thing that the community is so built around these waifus, but I can't really blame them. I mean, look at the chick who won a fan contest. She's only been in one Fire Emblem game. She barely has a story behind her, but what she does have is a terrific set of personality. And I do have a slight worry that the tactics genre is going to cater to those fans of the series and put combat on the back burner. And this effect can already be felt. Firaxis basically added a dating system into XCOM when they created Marvel's Midnight Suns. And why wouldn't you add it to your game? These scenes take basically nothing to make, and they'll go absolutely nuts just to hear a few lines of special dialogue. And I can't shake the feeling that more and more games will add dating simulators into them. Because why not take advantage of the loneliness commonly plaguing gamers and nerds? But if you are going to exploit people's loneliness, then I guess I agree. They should put some effort into it and make something better than the dating sims seen in Three Houses or Engage. It's fucking 2023. We have AI GFs that will text you in real life. Up until a few days ago, they would send you tit pics. In 2017, we had a game that could simulate boobs using the Joy-Cons. 5 years later, we've regressed more than Christine Chandler. You're telling me we can't come up with a minigame where you're able to hold hands and pick apples at the same time? I don't love the idea of adding dating simulators to every single game, but fans in general shouldn't settle for Three Houses with a new skin, new pairs, and new polls. They should expect meaningful updates across the board. With the Game Standard here at Tibbs TV, I'm Jonathan Rosenblum.